Hello, everyone, and welcome to McGill Cares webcast series supporting family and informal caregivers. I'm Claire Webster, a former caregiver, certified dementia care consultant, and founder of McGill University's Dementia Education Program. I work with a dynamic team of leading healthcare professionals to oversee the program, who include Dr. José Moret from the Division of Geriatric Medicine and Dr. Serge Gauthier, Professor Emeritus, formerly of the McGill University Research Center for Studies in Aging. McGill Cares is supported by the Amelia Saputo Community Outreach for Dementia Care. The McGill University Dementia Education Program offers a very comprehensive range of free resources to educate and support persons living with dementia, family and informal caregivers, healthcare professionals, medical students, and the public at large. One of our most important resources is our Dementia Companion Guide, which is now available in 12 languages. It can be downloaded for free on our website at mcgill.ca/dementia, or printed copies are available on Amazon, and all proceeds go to support our program. So I really encourage you to visit our wide range of programs that we have to support you. So today we are going to be talking about the Caregiver Grief Connexion project. And two of my guests are my colleagues who have been collaborating with the Dementia Education Program since its founding. So I'm very happy to introduce Pam Orzeck and Zelda Freitas. So Pam Orzeck is Associate Professor in the McGill School of Social Work and part of the coordination team at the Caregiver Connexion project. Her latest research focuses on women's bereavement experiences after caregiving. She has published several articles and co-edited a book on professional interventions with caregivers. Zelda Freitas is Adjunct Professor at the McGill School of Social Work and part of the coordination team of the Caregiver Grief Connexion project. Ms. Freitas' expertise involves caregivers and caregiving, psychosocial practice, including palliative care and end-of-life care, countering adult mistreatment, and older adults. So Ms. Orzeck and Ms. Freitas are going to talk about the Caregiver Grief Connexion project. Welcome to McGill Cares.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Claire.
So my first question is, what motivated you each to develop this important project?
Well, this project is born of about 30 years of practice. So we saw early on in our careers, in the early 2000s, when conversations about caregivers were just getting started, we saw that caregivers needed more attention, caregivers needed more support, and once the caregiving had ended due to the loss of the care receiver, caregivers really had very, very little support to help them navigate the bereavement and grief processes. So we started talking about caregiver grief in the early 2000s when caregiving support became relevant and important and on the map for us as practitioners who worked in a CLSC at the time.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well, Claire and Pam, the whole experience of COVID. What we saw through COVID, what I experienced through COVID, and just being in connection and contact with a number of different people and caregivers, was there was a real difficulty in processing grief around the deaths that happened during COVID, and that there was a very, very, very few resources available to caregivers during that period of time. So that really emphasized to Pam and I the real need to start looking at and addressing caregiver grief.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know, talking from my own experience, my mom passed away in 2016 in a long-term care facility, and I was with her alone when it happened. And there was nobody there to provide me any type of support afterwards. It's like, okay, the person has passed away and you're supposed to just brush it off and get on with your life. And I think nothing would have prepared me for the cathartic, emotional, really traumatic emotions that came 2 weeks later, especially following the funeral. And there was no support, and I didn't even think of getting support, right? And I think that's what happens, right? Like, regardless of whether or not you're caring for a person with dementia, once you lose somebody, there's nobody there to really offer the support.
That's
yes,
right.
And we've seen that whether you're caring for someone with dementia or with a physical limitation or a mental health issue, your identity as a caregiver really takes hold of your life and encompasses a lot of the daily emotional, physical, stress and thoughts. So afterwards, there's a gap, there's a void, and so people have a lot of trouble filling the void or trying to understand the losses. And there are so many losses along the way in caregiving. So once the final loss happens, there's a real transition and a real difficulty for some as they move into what is a different kind of life.
So what do you hope the Caregiver Grief Connection will achieve?
Yeah, well, we hope that the Caregiver Grief Connection will achieve exactly that: is connection, is identifying and being able to let caregivers know that their grief is recognized, their grief is important, and their grief could be different than other people's, and even in their own support systems grief. And sometimes what we hear from caregivers is that they don't feel that they have, it's like in the caregiving journey, right? When you're involved with other caregivers, it's like, okay, I finally get people that understand what I'm talking about. And then it carries over into the grief. And although people, caregivers might have really good supports in their own support network, good friend and family support, they sometimes feel isolated in their grief because they don't feel like they have, they're not understood in their totality of their grief. And so what we're hoping to build is the sense of connection to other caregivers, and also to make sure that their grief is part of their journey and not an afterthought, but that it's included in caregiver support, and that we're very concentrated, and we should be, on offering really good supports to caregivers. As you mentioned, Claire, their dementia education guide, that is good support for caregivers, but we want to carry all of that innovation and initiatives to support caregivers, and not ignore that there is a period of time in caregiving, which is the post-caregiving period, that they also need support in. So that's what we're hoping to achieve.
Okay, so please show us how this program is going to work.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen, and Zelda and I are going to split who explains which slide. So just going forward, I'll say that the Caregiver Grief Connection, as Zelda mentioned, is a real connection hub or nexus of collaboration with caregivers who are bereaved, professionals, interdisciplinary professionals, students from social work, and potentially other disciplines. And it is a project of the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence, in addition to the McGill School of Social Work and the CREGES, which is the Centre for Research and Expertise in Social Gerontology. It is a real collaboration between all of these players, and every one of them is keen on having post-caregiving or bereavement be part of the caregiver life course, so that at the beginning of caregiving, when the person becomes a caregiver, and then all the way through well after the death of their loved one, of their care receiver. Because the idea is, if we have this transition, if we have this life course view, then we will support the caregiver until they're ready to say, thank you, I'm good. And not be in a situation where they have zero support or a void of support. Okay, so what is caregiver grief? We know that caregiving has impacts on people's health and personal, social, family life, employment, finances, mental health, etc. This is what caregiving has. There are beautiful benefits and beautiful positives, and then there are the challenges and the negatives for everyone. The experience is different. Everyone's individual. But we know, and after 30 years in the field, we know that caregivers continue to be impacted by their role even after the person they were caring for has passed away. And that bereavement is experienced differently by caregivers versus non-caregivers. And this is across the literature. It's been said 50 times. The experience of bereavement is different when the caregiving component was present. And so this is really where the realization that we made over the years, that we need to support our caregivers in this process. So We've done multiple research studies, we've done articles, we've done lots of research which have showed that the needs of the caregivers do not end with the care receiver's death. The support needs, in fact, can be amplified and increased after. And many times the caregivers feel a tremendous sense of loss of the person they cared for, of the care receiver, but also of the world in which they lived, where, for example, in a nursing home or in a long-term care center, if they were visiting every day, they had, contacts with the people who worked there, the people who live there, and all of a sudden that ends. So that's why we talk about multiple and compound losses in post-caregiving. So there's the death of the loved one, the loss of their identity, the loss of their couple or their, familial relationship, the loss of the meaning. If someone was going to offer caregiving to a loved one every day for 8 to 10 years, which is the average range of caregiving, well, that's a significant amount of time to then have zero or much less to do afterwards. And this could put caregivers at risk of experiencing complex grief. And complex grief can look, for different people, can look different ways, but it could mean a loss of hope. It could mean a loss of interest in daily life or in the other interests. It could mean a little bit of depressive symptoms. It could create tremendous anxiety with feelings of regret or guilt. A lot of these issues really need support. A lot of caregivers would benefit from the support afterwards. And we've already seen that in our research project, which we will discuss, which Zelda will talk to, but we've already seen the benefits for people. One of the caregivers we've interviewed said the grief was so different for me because the caregiving took over my whole life. Like, it was so intense. Every function of my life was the responsibility, and now I have nothing. So there's a real shift. And as we've said, caregiving has a very big influence on the sense of identity, meaning, and purpose that the caregiver has. And Claire, as you know more than anyone, I mean, if you're caregiving for someone, it becomes your life. It becomes your world. And so this influence, or we call it the primary driver of someone's identity, is significant. And when they let go of other hobbies or goals or social worlds or aspects of their lives, it's very hard to reclaim those lives after. And sometimes people say, I want to go back to my old life, but that was 10 years ago and I'm not who I was then. So, adapting to a new life or a new routine or a new social world can be very complex and needs support. We've interviewed, dozens of caregivers, all of whom have said they felt a combination of depletion, feeling drained, relief, depression, anxiety, hopelessness, helplessness, social isolation. But all of these things at the same time, there was pride that they cared well for their loved one. There was meaning that what they did for those 2, 6, 4, 8, 10 years was important and valuable. So there's a real mix of emotions, both positive and negative, in post-caregiving. So this is a tool that we developed over the years with a researcher named Isabelle Van Pevenage. This is a cartography of factors which influence the caregiver's experiences of loss. So and this is widely available, and there's a training that goes with it that's free. This is a tool that looks at all the elements that may influence the caregiver's adaptation to bereavement. And they could have both a positive or negative impact. And just as an example, I'll pick one thing. Work for a caregiver could be a negative or something that drains them while they're offering care or while they're in their bereavement phase. On the other hand, work could be a refuge and a real relief and an opportunity to engage with others and have distraction. So this cartography is more of a working tool for professionals to try and go through the context of the caregiving and the bereavement and see where the support can be applied. how can I help this person? What are the issues that are highlighted that they need assistance with? And I mean, I think this is an incredible tool. And I think that, more and more we're using it, and we're teaching our students how to use it in the School of Social Work as well, because it really looks at the whole person care in bereavement. And it really looks at some of the risk factors and some of the resources that the caregiver can access. Zelda?
So, yeah, thanks, Pam. So some of the barriers that we've noted, and it's well noted in research as well with regards to bereavement, caregiver bereavement support, as you'll see, is that there are, as we know, limited professional resources that offer free bereavement support. So when we're looking at our healthcare system, there are some pockets of resources within the healthcare system, and there definitely are some community resources, but there are some limited. They're limited in some ways or other. So we have, to looking at caregiver support in general, there is bereavement support, but we're looking at specific resources for caregivers, and there is some limit in that. As we all know, there's staffing shortages in the healthcare system as well, and so maybe caregivers, their needs post caregiving or after the person they cared for has died, perhaps there might not be as readily support available to them, or ready support available to them after the person has passed on. There's a need for healthcare and social services is based on relationships, and we're experiencing, as everyone knows, high staff turnover in our healthcare systems, and it's hard for caregivers to develop that relationship that they need with their healthcare teams, and so this could also have an impact and create a barrier for them to get good support afterwards. Sometimes care providers just feel ill-equipped, not having maybe the education or the skill set to deal or provide bereavement support. And so that's something we're hoping to address as well. Healthcare policy that restricts really the availability or the ability for healthcare providers and health and social service providers to provide ongoing support to caregivers after the person who was, as we know, as the patient or the user of the healthcare system dies. Their follow-up dies with them, in a sense, in the healthcare system that we have right now. And there's a limited ability for that healthcare provider team to be able to provide some ongoing support. So that becomes a bit of a barrier to the caregivers. As you mentioned earlier, Claire, when your mom died in the nursing home, there was no follow-up that was available to you. That nursing home, had to continue on with their main mission, is to provide ongoing care to the people that live there. So there's barriers there. And there's a real lack of recognition of caregiver grief in our society in general. We're not a society that readily addresses grief and bereavement. And so when it comes to caregiver grief, we hear, comments, and caregivers feel comments such as, it must be a relief for you now that your dad who had Alzheimer's dementia for 10 years, it must be relief to you that he is, you have other, he's gone now, you can now move on and do other things with your life. This kind of thing is a lack of recognition for the grief that caregiver might be experiencing, and we want to be able to address that. So how do we plan on addressing that? Well, we've developed the Caregiver Grief Connexion, and we're very, very grateful to be in partnership with the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence, who is doing excellent work across Canada, looking at the issues of caregiving and how we can better support caregivers, and putting forth actually a caregiver strategy very soon. So if you're interested in anything to do with caregiving, I strongly recommend you go to their website and take a look at what they're doing and how you can get involved. But what we're planning on doing is, we have two main goals, and one is really to increase support to grieving caregivers. That's our main mission. But we also, through that, we want to be able able to equip health and social service providers, families and friends with really solid evidence-based training and resources on the realities of caregiving and how grief fits into that reality. So we want to be able to provide that as well. And we have a small little mighty team. Pam, as you who's here with me today. We have Patrick de Rivage, which is a social worker who he works at one of our CLSC home care programs, and also a palliative care expert coordinator at the CAGES. And we have our wonderful coordinator, Rebecca, who is doing a lot of the background work and really helping us to keep organized and on top of our mission. So that's our little team. And we have mighty aims. As you can see, we have quite a few things that we want to get done. We're not going to get them all done at the same time, but we're definitely looking at this as a long-term project. So we want to develop some tools, of course, and we have a website and we're populating that website right now. And we want to make sure that it's accessible and it has accessible information and resources for caregiver grief, on caregiver grief, for caregivers, for health providers, for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more, and also where they can find resources to better support bereaved caregivers. We want to develop a hub, a community of practice for care providers, so we're a place where people can connect with each other and be able to talk about and learn about caregiver grief. And we want to raise awareness. We want to raise awareness and talk about caregiver grief as much as we possibly can to make sure that it's not an afterthought in any kind of programming, that it's really included and acknowledged within the caregiver journey. We want to be able to do research. There's a lot more research that needs to be done in this area. And so we're partnering with, of course, the McGill University School of Social Work and other interdisciplinary programs that are interested in looking at these issues. We also want to advocate for better policy around support to caregivers. And we already have in Quebec a really good law on recognition of caregivers. And there's a number of actions and measures that are part of that plan of action as the law is being put into place. So we want to be able to continue to talk about grief and caregiver grief and make sure that there are measures that could be put in place to better support caregivers and within their grief. We've done a number of consultations just to let you know that, we've talked to bereaved caregivers, and we constantly want to talk to more bereaved caregivers. We've talked to health and social service providers who tell us that, who have fueled a lot of what our aims are, and who tell us that they need more education and skills training around how to better address caregiver grief. Researchers and different organizations across Canada. There are a number of organizations and resources across Canada that look and work on caregiver grief and grief in general. And so we really want to connect with them as well. And so this is our website. It's still under construction, but we hope that you will, subscribe to our newsletter and stay tuned to our ongoing developments. That's our website address. And if you take a look at it, you'll see the number of different things that we're trying to get on the website so that we can address some of the goals and objectives that we have.
And I'll just thank you
so much. Oops.
Oh, sorry, Zelda. I just want to add one thing. This is when Zelda and I pitched this project to the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. We felt very strongly that this project would be open access and free to anybody who wants to access it. So it's really a clearinghouse and a pulling together of resources and support that any professional or any caregiver can access. And that was important to us because over the years we've seen that there were certain support services but not accessible to everybody. So this is really our goal, and also to collaborate with all the partners in the space and just try and share resources as much as we possibly can.
So one of the projects that we're working on, actually, if I could just take a minute or two just to kind of give you all an example of what we're talking about, is that we've developed what we're calling a telehealth virtual support for caregivers. And so we've partnered with the CIUS Centre West here in Montreal, and they're a healthcare network. And what we've done is we've spoken to people over at the home care department there and people also in the long-term care sector. And they're interested in partnering with us and have been partnering with us in terms of referring caregivers that they've been involved with. Once the person that they've been caring for dies, they refer to our it's usually telehealth, a telephone outreach service. And what we do is we partner with the McGill students from the School of Social Work, and we offer ongoing support to caregivers that are referred to us through those two programs that I've just mentioned. And so what we're trying to do is bridge a gap for caregivers who find themselves alone and isolated and not really sure how to reconnect, if they want to reconnect with some of their previous social roles or their community, or they want to develop new supports. And so we try to help them through that period, that transition period, through their grief, and to help them reconnect, like I said, with resources. So we offer them ongoing virtual support for a period of time, to depending on what their needs are, in order to help them connect also with resources that are available in the community, if they're not aware of them, and so on. So that's one project that we've been working on. And I think, Pam, you have a few words to say about how what's been some of the feedback that we've received from some of the caregivers that we've been able to support.
Yeah, the feedback has been amazing, and the caregivers the caregivers really appreciate the follow-up and the support and the ability to have an ongoing connection with someone after they've managed, while they're managing the loss of their loved one. And even the intervenants, even the professionals who are referring to us, are saying, "This is amazing. I feel so good that I can send my client, my patient, somewhere where they'll get the follow-up, because I can't follow them up. It's not in my mandate." There's no mandate for bereavement in home care. So it does exist in palliative care, but it doesn't exist across the board in home care. So here's an opportunity where professionals can refer their clients with peace of mind and know that they're going to be followed up until such time that the client feels, okay, I got this. I can be back in my world. I can resume my life and take the support that I've received, and try and forge a new way for myself.
So just to understand the steps of the process, first of all, the service is free.
Yes,
is that correct? The service is free.
Yes.
So because now I see that your website is under construction. So just take me through the steps. So I'm a caregiver who needs support. What do I do? Do I go to your website and then request a consultation? Is there a number that I can call? Like, how would I get that support, like, right away or as soon as possible?
So our website is under construction, but there are bones there there's a phone number, there's an email, all of which access our project coordinator, who will follow up right away with anyone who emails or calls in. No problem there. She'll either, depending on the situation, of course, she'll triage and make a decision about whether she wants to refer out to someone, whether she feels that our students can manage the support. There are multiple aspects, but right away, someone can self-refer, can make a call, can write an email. The website itself will be up and running fully in the next 6 months. So that's good. And this year we had a team of 2 social work students. Next year we hope for more. So it really was a pilot year as we built out the website. But the ongoing feedback and engagement from the students has been amazing. We're onboarding volunteers to also be involved in the support, so that while the students are on summer break, we have a continuity of care. So that's all, it's quite new. We're just building it out. It's our first year. But a caregiver can right away email or call to get access.
And if there are caregivers watching right now from across Canada, I mean, although there may be more specific to Quebec, but are caregivers from across Canada or outside even of the country available to access this support?
They can access our website, and they can access and connect with us through email or through the phone number that Pam mentioned that's on the website. And we will do our best to connect them to resources in their area, talk to them about what other resources might be available. But we definitely will not turn away any caregiver that connects with us, and we'll make sure that they will, again, that bridge, we'll bridge them to whatever resources are available in their area. So yes, definitely, we want to be able to speak to people and have them feel that they're going to have their questions answered. We've got a number of calls, and we've been able to reach them very quickly and connect with them and connect with other resources across Canada that will help that person as well.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wonderful initiative with us. We will make sure also to have the link to your program at under the resources section of the McGill University Dementia Education Program. And perhaps once your website is fully launched, we can also notify all of our listeners and our people who are on our mailing list. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
McGill Cares is an initiative of the McGill University Dementia Education Program, which is funded by private donations. If you would like to make a contribution to our program, please visit us at mcgill.ca/dementia. And if you would like to join our mailing list to be notified about upcoming episodes of McGill Cares, as well as other important programs and resources, you can email us at dementia@mcgill.ca or sign up again on our website. Thank you for watching.